When the ocean tears a wooden ship apart, the survivors are left with nothing but the wreckage. For aristocratic twins Sebastian and Viola, the storm means being ripped apart and cast into the freezing waves alone. The scholars at the Folger Shakespeare Library point out that Shakespeare's work has traveled the globe for 400 years because he captures these exact moments of extreme human vulnerability. His characters endure. Through centuries of ink, pressings, and misprintings, the text of Twelfth Night preserves the very physical, visceral reality of a survivor desperately trying to find her footing. For Viola, that reality is grim. She washes up entirely alone on the foreign shores of Illyria, convinced her twin brother Sebastian has drowned in the wreck. With her family gone and her resources at the bottom of the sea, her previous life is erased. To survive the immediate threat of starvation and exposure, she has to become someone else. A lone, impoverished woman in an unfamiliar, male-governed territory is an easy target. So she shears away her long hair, binds her chest, and adopts masculine clothing. She steps into the court of Count Orsino under the fabricated identity of Cesario, a young male servant. The disguise works flawlessly, earning her steady employment and the Count's trust. But by securing her physical safety, she traps her own mind. She can walk freely through the palace halls, yet she cannot speak a single truthful word about her past, her grief, or her desires. By adopting this persona, Viola forces a lie into the heart of Illyrian society. She is safe, but she has made genuine human connection impossible, creating a friction that spreads to everyone she meets. The local ruler, Count Orsino, is hopelessly obsessed with Lady Olivia. Olivia, however, is grieving her own dead brother and flatly ignores every romantic overture the Count makes. Desperate, Orsino dispatches his eloquent new servant, Cesario, to Olivia's estate. Cesario is ordered to act as a personal proxy and deliver the Count's passionate declarations of love. This diagram shows the social ties in Illyria. When Olivia hears Orsino's message, she dismisses the Count entirely. Instead, she is captivated by the messenger, drawing a line of sudden romantic affection directly to Cesario. Meanwhile, hidden from the court, Viola is falling for her master, Orsino. Because she is bound by her disguise as a boy, she cannot confess her feelings. Orsino chases Olivia. Olivia chases Cesario. Viola, playing Cesario, longs for Orsino. It creates a perfect, unsolvable loop. Every major character is now pouring their passion into an illusion. As long as the disguise remains, the court's romantic energy is simply spinning in circles, and no one can find the love they are actually looking for. Down in the lower quarters of Olivia's estate, a separate pocket of disorder is brewing. Sir Toby, Sir Andrew, and the clever gentlewoman Maria spend their nights drinking and loudly breaking the household's strict rules. Their primary obstacle is Malvolio, Olivia's head steward. Malvolio demands absolute order, but his severe exterior masks a massive, fragile ego and a belief that he is destined for aristocratic greatness. To punish his arrogance, the trio exploit this exact weakness. They forge a love letter mimicking Olivia's handwriting, deliberately tricking the steward into believing the lady of the house is secretly in love with him. Instructed by the forged letter, Malvolio begins wearing bizarre yellow stockings and smiling maniacally at a deeply confused Olivia. He abandons his senses and social standing completely. Malvolio's public humiliation echoes the confusion in the main court. He's led into ruin by the same kind of self-deception that is currently blinding the nobles. Then, a new disrupting variable enters the equation. Sebastian, Viola's twin brother, did not drown. He washes ashore and walks straight into the capital. He looks completely identical to Cesario. Instantly, the local residents begin treating this bewildered stranger like an established member of the court. Olivia encounters him on the street, and thinking he is Cesario, rushes him to the altar to marry him. Minutes later, Sir Toby and Sir Andrew track him down and begin aggressively drawing swords against a man they've never actually met. The social order is now fraying. Between the hidden twin, the forged letters, and the lingering disguises, the people of Illyria have lost their grip on what is actually real. To relieve the pressure, all the conflicting parties converge on the same physical space for a final reckoning. For the very first time, Count Orsino, Lady Olivia, and the rest of the court see Cesario and Sebastian standing side by side. Looking at the twins, Orsino delivers a line that captures the sheer impossibility of the moment. One face, one voice, one habit, and two persons, a natural perspective that is and is not. With the physical evidence standing right next to her, Viola finally drops the mask. She reveals her true identity and her history, erasing the persona of Cesario for good. The moment the lie is removed, the gridlock clears. Orsino realizes his deep affection for his servant translates to the true Viola, and Olivia is thrilled to find herself legally married to Sebastian. As the Folger editors note in their introduction, the core of Twelfth Night is a journey toward joyful discovery, one that requires navigating profound confusion to reach. The residents of Illyria show us that wretched plans often fail. Sometimes you have to temporarily lose your identity and wander through the dark in a stranger's clothes to finally figure out where you belong. What classic story should we untangle next? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest texts.